All right, so North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis made a huge announcement yesterday having to do with the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Now, this is basically the prosecutor for D.C., but the U.S. Attorney also handles a lot of other things as well on the federal level and investigations into the federal government. For instance, if the FBI or the Justice Department is investigating some kind of corruption or leaks or misuse of funds or what have you within the federal government, oftentimes it's the D.C. U.S. attorney that will take on that case. It's a very important and influential U.S. attorney role. They also act as the sort of attorney general or district attorney for the city of Washington, D.C. Ed Martin's been in that position. He's facing Senate confirmation right now. And by the way, as somebody who works on a daily basis in Washington, D.C., things are better already, just 110 days in. And we've actually got bad guys getting prosecuted and put away. Even the liberal Democrats on the district council in Washington complained about Biden's guy for releasing hardened criminals, acting like these ridiculous Soros prosecutors, letting criminals who were arrested off with a slap on the wrist or without a day in court at all. Even the liberal Democrats in Washington were complaining about the predecessor. Now we got Trump's guy. Now we got a DOJ guy in there working for the Trump administration and actually enforcing the law. So what the hell is going on with Thom Tillis, who yesterday announced that he was backing away and will not support Mr. Martin for this position in the Senate? Here's what he had to say, and then we'll break it down.
He is, I don't believe he's being advanced to the markup. And I met with Mr. Martin. He seems like a good man. Most of my concerns related to January 6th. And he built a compelling case on some of the 1512 prosecutions that were probably heat of the moment bad decisions. But where we probably have a difference is I think anybody that breached the perimeter should have been in prison for some period of time, whether it's 30 days or 3 years is debatable. But I have no tolerance for anybody who entered the building on January the 6th. And that's probably where most of the friction was.
I see. So he disagreed with you on that?
Well, now I have to say that Mr. Martin did a good job of explaining how there were people that probably got caught up in it. But they made the stupid decision to come through a building that had been breached and that the police officers and others were saying, stay away. So the difference wasn't that they should be charged, in my estimation. It's by how much. That's an argument I'm willing to have, but we have to be very, very clear that what happened on January the 6th was wrong. It wasn't, it was not prompted or created by other people to put those people in trouble. They made a stupid decision and they disgraced the United States by absolutely destroying the Capitol. And I can't have any patience.
It sounds like your concerns were not a.
But let me be very clear, though. Mr. Martin did a good job of explaining the one area that I think he's probably right, that there were some people that were over prosecuted, but there were some 200 or 300 of them that should have never gotten a pardon, and he agreed with that. But the disagreement there had more to do. If Mr. Martin were being put forth as a U.S. attorney for any district except the district where January 6th happened, the protest happened, I'd probably support him, but not in this district.
When you said he's not being advanced to the markup, was he operating under that understanding that he's not being advanced through to a markup?
Well, I think Mr. Martin, I'm sure they're looking through it. I mean, be clear, some of the deadline has to do with the length of time he can operate as acting, and the administration can work through that if they want to have more time and potentially work them through. But at this point, I've indicated to the White House I wouldn't support his nomination.
All right. So, and he couldn't get out of there fast enough, right? All right. That's 2 minutes and change. We're going to go through that entire video in just a moment together. And this whole idea about how much time the administration has to have him as an interim prosecutor and what happens if his time is up. I believe it's 125 days. That's coming up. We'll get to that in a moment as well. First, though, this whole idea that this is all about January 6th. Boy, that's a clue as to what's really going on here. Anybody with a brain, anybody who's watching what's going on, everyone who has seen what's transpired in this country for the last couple of years and certainly in the last 6 months knows exactly the story about January 6th and where the people of this country are on that issue and what the reality is as it relates to the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. But before I get into that, here's John Strand. John Strand was one of those people who, as Thom Tillis just acknowledged, got caught up on January 6th. Watch what he has to say.
I'm John Strand. I was persecuted by a weaponized Democrat DOJ for peacefully walking through the Capitol on January 6. I was sentenced to nearly 3 years in prison, not for violence, but for refusing to accept a plea deal that required me to lie and affirm the government's fraudulent narrative. Now, Senator Thom Tillis is opposing Ed Martin, one of the few men who actually understands the injustice that I and hundreds of others have endured. This isn't politics. It's a cover-up. A cowardly effort to protect political insiders and corrupt officials who abused their power to silence dissent. If Tillis won't support President Trump's nominee, a man clearly dedicated to justice, then I will dedicate myself to ending Thom Tillis's career. I will work tirelessly to see him exposed, primaried, and removed from office. We will not let cowards cover for tyranny. Confirm Ed Martin. And if you're watching this, share it. Make sure Tillis knows. We see him, and we won't forget this.
Yeah, and Tillis does know. That's what makes this move so curious. You see, he's up for re-election in 2026. The primary process could begin any day now with various people throwing their hat in the ring. Some people are saying it's going to be potentially Laura Trump, who comes from North Carolina originally. She lives in Florida now, of course, with her husband, Eric. All right, so what's this all about? Well, listen, Thom Tillis has been an outspoken critic of the activities of January 6th and directly linking Donald Trump to those activities. But that's not all. You see, back during the Robert Mueller Russian collusion special prosecutor investigation hoax, this guy, this Republican, decided to team up with Chris Coons of Delaware, you know, the Democrat who ended up being the chairman of Joe Biden's eventual presidential campaign. Yeah, he teamed up with Coons to try to craft legislation to prohibit Donald Trump from firing Robert Mueller, the special prosecutor. Something that he wasn't going to do anyway, but this guy was so anti-Trump then that he wanted to bend over backwards to prevent the president from firing Robert Mueller, basically giving Robert Mueller carte blanche to do whatever he wanted outside of the Constitution even. This guy is an anti-Trumper, and this is what he said in the wake of the January 6th events.
I think it's bull. I was down there. And I saw maybe a few tourists, a few people who got caught up in things. But when you see police barricades breached, when you see police officers assaulted, all of that, or you had to be in close proximity to it. If you were just a tourist, you should have probably lined up at the visitor center and came in on an orderly basis.
Okay, so that's just incoherent what he said there. Let's just be clear. I don't think he was there. Actually, maybe he was. Maybe he got out of the Capitol building. Maybe he walked outside of the steps and maybe he watched everything happening. I think he watched it on television, and those police barricades, we've all seen them. They were bike racks. You know, any Republican who is speaking about January 6th, either at the time or now after the fact, like Thom Tillis is, if they don't utter the words, why didn't Nancy Pelosi call in for more police? Why didn't Nancy Pelosi respond to the sergeant at arms and the chief of the Capitol Police to bring in more cops like they were asking, like they were requesting? Why did police officers stand and hold open the door to allow people to walk in? That's just incoherent what he had to say, and it's deceptive. But this has always been a thing with Thom Tillis on January 6th. So now we go back to the statement he made yesterday about why he won't support Ed Martin, which, by the way, you just heard him say, oh, I'd support him anywhere across the country. I'd support him in any other district, just not D.C. because of January 6th. Okay. Oh, and by the way, that just want to be clear. The video of Thom Tillis just now talking about releasing footage of January 6th where he called it bull. That was when Tucker Carlson got footage of what happened inside the Capitol. That was his response to Tucker Carlson releasing that video. All right. So now let's break down this because I just alluded to the fact that anybody with a sentient brain, anybody who is watching the news for the last 6 months knows a couple of things about January 6th that I guess strangely Thom Tillis doesn't know, or he thinks you're stupid. He thinks, well, the viewers on CNN where he gave this interview, because that's Manu Raju of CNN interviewing him, they're stupid, and maybe they are. They're certainly uninformed. And he certainly thinks the people of North Carolina are stupid, or he thinks that the people of North Carolina don't give a flip about who the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia is. He's wrong there. They don't care who it is, but they care that Donald Trump wants this guy there, and that should be enough for Thom Tillis. because that's what Republicans do. When there's a Republican in the White House, they support the Republican's nomination, at least if they want to be a member in good standing of the party. That's what party politics is all about. You know how I know? Because I see the Democrats do it all the time, because they all walk in lockstep behind their leaders. They do whatever Nancy Pelosi tells them to do. Not us. No. We got smart guys like Thom Tillis who are bigger than the party. Okay. So let's break this down, shall we? Because there's a lot of golden nuggets in here that people with brains in their noggins will actually figure out.
He is, I don't believe he's being advanced to the markup. I met with Mr. Martin. He seems like a good man. Most of my concerns related to January 6th. And he built a compelling case on some of the 1512 prosecutions that were probably heat of the moment bad decisions.
Okay, real fast. Those 1512 prosecutions actually mean hundreds of people that were all part of the same prosecution. Set that aside for a minute. This is all about January 6th. What's one thing every American knows right now about January 6th? Well, actually, two things that every American knows about January 6th. Number one is that we had 4 years of conversation about January 6th, including the kangaroo court primetime produced ridiculous committee hearing that was completely one-sided, where Republicans weren't even represented on the panel. The only two Republicans that were there were the ones handpicked by Nancy Pelosi, not Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader at the time for the minority party. First time in history that we've ever seen that happen. But it was talked about for years. Everyone in the media talked about it. They tried to prosecute Donald Trump about it. Biden and Harris spent their entire campaigns talking half of the time about January 6th. And then the people voted. And, oh, by the way, what did Donald Trump say when he was running for office last year? January 6th was bull, and I will pardon everybody that was involved. And we, the people, got to vote based on that. We got to vote based on everything that the media said about January 6th, everything Liz Cheney said and Nancy Pelosi said, and everything that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris said about January 6th. And we used our brains, we used our vote, and we let our voices be heard. And we said, we don't care, Thom Tillis. We don't care, Thom Tillis. In fact, we agree with Donald Trump, Thom Tillis, but Thom Tillis knows better than you. So that's the one thing that everybody knows. So what's the second thing everybody knows about January 6th at this point? That apparently Thom Tillis thinks you're too stupid to know. The other thing everybody knows about January 6th is on day one, maybe week one, Donald Trump issued pardons to every single person involved. Donald Trump has already pardoned everybody, and you may disagree with that. You may think it was a bad idea. Thom Tillis apparently does too. But here's what you need to know. The fact that the president has already issued pardons to every single person involved in January 6th means that it is literally irrelevant in the question as to who should be the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, whether it's Ed Martin or whether it's Merrick Garland or whether it's Kamala Harris or whether it's the resurrected soul of Robert Bork or whether it's me. No matter who is the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, they can't do anything about January 6th because everybody's been pardoned. What's he going to do? Over-pardon them? What's he going to do? Not charge them even more? What's the concern? What's the argument? This has to do with January 6th, he says, which is completely off the table because they've all been pardoned. But there is another aspect of January 6th that Thom Tillis might be concerned about, and we'll get to that in a second. The last thing he just said there, though, about Ed Martin making a good case about what now?
A compelling case on some of the 1512 prosecutions that were probably heat of the moment bad decisions. But
yeah, heat of the moment bad decisions. It's a hell of a turn of phrase, isn't it, Mr. Tillis? Heat of the moment. But yeah, these are heat of the moment bad decisions. They probably got caught up. They probably shouldn't have been prosecuted. These people's lives were ruined. People were sent to prison, like for years. They went into debt. Their homes were invaded at 6 a.m. by armed SWAT teams. Oh yeah, he made a compelling case there. Probably they shouldn't have. What could we find the video, please, of Thom Tillis railing against the last U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia because of his overzealous prosecution for people who were caught up? No, he just shrugs it off. There's no video of Thom Tillis angry about the Constitution and the full force of the Justice Department under Joe Biden being thrown at people who got caught up on January 6th. He didn't care about that. He didn't call a press conference. He didn't bring in Manu Raju of CNN saying, I have something to say about this overzealous prosecution. He didn't say a damn thing. The only thing he wants attention for is for stopping Ed Martin, who's right about that. And he just shrugs it off. Yeah, it's probably heat of the moment, probably some bad decisions on prosecuting them. Boy, he's playing pretty fast and loose there with people's lives, isn't he? But it gets worse.
Where we probably have a difference is I think anybody that breached the perimeter should have been in prison for some period of time, whether it's 30 days or 3 years is debatable, but I have no tolerance for anybody who entered the building on January the 6th, and that's probably where most of the friction was.
I see. So he disagreed with you on that?
Well, now I have to say that Mr. Martin did a good job of explaining how there were people that probably got caught up in it, but they made the stupid decision to come through a building that had been breached and that the police officers and others were saying stay away. So the difference wasn't that they should be charged, in my estimation. It's by how much. That's an argument I'm willing to have, but we have to be very, very clear that what happened on January the 6th was wrong. It wasn't, it was not prompted or created by other people to put those people in trouble. They made a stupid decision and they disgraced the United States by absolutely destroying the Capitol. And I can't have any patience.
So the Capitol wasn't absolutely destroyed. That's just hyperbole. Let's be generous. The Capitol was not absolutely destroyed, number one. But did you catch that? Let's be clear. There was nothing about January 6th that was prompted or instigated by other people. You see, because everything that he said about January 6th right now, as we just explained rather fervently and energetically, is irrelevant because everybody's been pardoned. So now what was that? What was that part? You know, nothing prompted this. Nobody was behind this. You see, this is where January 6th actually is relevant. It has nothing to do with whether people were charged or not, or improperly charged, or improperly imprisoned, or any of the other things, or the fact that Thom Tillis lied, or at the very least, as generously as I can be, was mistaken when he suggested, and actually he didn't even suggest, he said outright that Officer Brian Sicknick was killed after being attacked and suffered injuries of January 6th. That did not happen. Even the Washington Post has conceded that the autopsy shows that his death, tragic as it may be for Officer Sicknick and his family, were not related to the events of January 6th. Thom Tillis is on the record still saying that, though. No, you see, he just gave away the store right there about what this is really about. He's not concerned about the people who were arrested, charged, or convicted and imprisoned on January 6th. He's rightfully saying that they have a different opinion, he and Ed Martin, about that. But they've all been pardoned, so it doesn't matter. So why does this matter? Why is January 6th important? Listen to it again.
My estimation, it's by how much. That's an argument I'm willing to have, but we have to be very, very clear that what happened on January the 6th was wrong. It wasn't, it was not prompted or created by other people.
Right there. Prompted or created by other. How do you know that? How do you know that? How does he know that? How does he know that? I mean, we finally got a revelation just a couple of months ago that we know for a fact that there was a certain number of FBI informants who were in the crowd. There were a certain number of people who had forewarning about this. We know that now. That's a fact. It hasn't been investigated. It wasn't part of the January 6th committee investigation. There was a bunch of stuff they never looked at. They still never looked at why Nancy Pelosi didn't call in the National Guard when it was pre-approved. In fact, the key witness that said he witnessed Donald Trump telling the Pentagon 3 days in advance to give Nancy Pelosi or Muriel Bowser as much National Guard support as they want. He pre-authorized it, the president did. If it's requested, it has to be requested. President just can't call in the National Guard, but he can authorize it in the District of Columbia after it's been requested. So he pre-authorized it. And who was the key witness that saw the president? Well, it was the chief of staff of the Pentagon at the time. Do you know who that was? Kash Patel, who's currently your FBI director. You see, Kash Patel is the FBI director. He could investigate what happened on January 6th. In fact, for all we know, he's got some investigators right now looking into January 6th and who did what and what decisions were made and what the FBI knew about it. And if anybody needs to be prosecuted because of their actions on January 6th within the United States government, guess who would be in charge of the prosecutions? The U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. The person Thom Tillis is now trying to remove. The person Thom Tillis will not support in confirmation. See, this is about January 6th, but not about all the individual American citizens who rightly or wrongly were arrested and prosecuted and imprisoned, because they're off the table now. They got pardoned. No, this has to do with the involvement of the government. This has to do with the involvement of the Pelosi team. This has to do with people on Capitol Hill. This has to do with the FBI and what they knew about January 6th and when they knew it and whether they did anything about it. That's what he wants to prevent. That's what he's trying to stop. This isn't about individuals on January 6th. It's about the deep state. This is about the government. This is about protecting or preventing an investigation into all of that. Who is Thom Tillis? What is this guy doing? What kind of judgment does he have right now as a United States Senator for the Republican Party, representing North Carolina? North Carolina, really, Tar Heels? Is this you up there? Who is Thom Tillis? Well, Thom Tillis is a guy who loved Merrick Garland. You know, the guy who was in charge of all of those prosecutions that even Thom Tillis himself is now saying, yeah, well, you know, maybe some people got caught up in that. That's unfortunate for those people. Unfortunate, you ruined their lives, but you loved Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland voted to confirm, Thom Tillis voted to confirm Merrick Garland, said he had an unbiased application of the law and his longstanding reputation of bipartisanship. Really, Tom, you want to revisit those remarks? You still think that based on Merrick Garland's behavior as Attorney General? You know, when he empowered the FBI to go after Catholics who speak Latin at Mass or parents who got angry at their local school board and treated them as domestic terrorists. Is that what was it again? Unbiased application of the law and a longstanding reputation for bipartisanship? Seriously? This is the judgment that North Carolina has in place right now as their senator? Who else is Thom Tillis? Thom Tillis is a guy that left Pete Hegseth dangling during his nomination process. He came around eventually. Sure he did. When pressure was put on, then he saw that there was no political tenable position. When Pete Hegseth dared to fight back and defend himself, when Thom Tillis saw that he was out on a limb. But this is who Thom Tillis is. So what's really going on here with Thom Tillis? Well, like I said, I think that he's trying to protect the deep state. He's trying to protect some of his colleagues, by the way. Senators always circle the wagons to protect each other. They hope to get that kind of protection in return someday as well. Adam Schiff was one of the happiest people yesterday when he learned that Thom Tillis had blocked this nomination. What does that tell you? Yeah, that Adam Schiff. You see, every single thing that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi are empowered right now to investigate with regard to deep state behaviors during the Trump administration the first time around and during the Biden administration, like censorship of you, like the decision to allow Anthony Fauci to run your life, all of those things that may border up to criminal behavior. The prosecutor for those criminal cases, should the evidence be found to bring an arrest or charges, that prosecutor would be the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Thom Tillis doesn't think the North Carolinians care about that. I think they do. I think he's hearing about it. And here's my bold prediction for you. I think by the end of the day today, Thom Tillis will do exactly what he did when he found out what happens when you FA with Pete Hegseth. He's in the FA stage right now. FO is coming. FO will come when he starts getting primaried for his Senate seat. Now, maybe he doesn't care about his Senate seat anymore. Maybe he thinks that he's going to be able to be just fine as a K Street lawyer or something. But he has any interest in being reelected in North Carolina, which I think is done right now regardless because of this behavior. But I think he backs down. I think he backs down by the end of the day today, actually. In fact, by the time you're watching this, he may have already backed down. If he didn't, it means he doesn't intend to run for re-election or he's already given up the ship. Maybe he'll switch parties and run as a Democrat. He might as well, because he supports Democrat nominations for things like Attorney General, more readily than he will for a Republican nomination. Why is this important? Why should you care about it? Well, because if in 120 days, Ed Martin is not confirmed by the Senate, which as of now, it won't happen, then the Chief Justice of the District Court of the District of Columbia gets to make the selection. That would be this guy, Judge Boasberg. You know, the guy who has single-handedly blocked almost every single move that the Trump administration has attempted to make with regard to securing our border and deporting criminal illegal immigrants. This is the guy who thought he could tell the president of the United States to turn a plane around midair over Central America. He gets to be the one to decide. Anybody think that Thom Tillis' political career can survive if that's the case, if that's what ends up happening? That Thom Tillis either has a political suicide mission, he's strapped the bombs on, metaphorically speaking, and he's ready to push the button, he doesn't care, or he's about to find out exactly what the people of North Carolina think and what the people of the United States of America think about his decision that he was so proud of yesterday. What was missed was as he was leaving the corridor there, he actually said to one of them, well, you know, yeah, I guess I could change my mind. I don't know what would change my mind, but I guess I could change my mind. His mind's going to be changed. And it's going to happen really fast, I think. Otherwise, Thom Tillis is D-O-N-E, done so.